I wasn't supposed to take that turn. I wasn't supposed to stop. That's how it started. Just a left turn I never meant to take after a long, exhausting shift at the clinic. My feet were aching, my mind foggy, and home was just a few blocks away. But as I passed my sister's street, something deep inside me whispered, "Go, you know that feeling, that quiet instinct that speaks louder than reason." I hadn't planned to check on Lisa that day. We hadn't been as close. Lately, not since her messy divorce. She'd become distant, guarded, but still she was my sister, and as I turned onto her street, I told myself it was just a quick stop. Maybe she needed company. Maybe I just missed her. But what I found was not comfort. It was a storm waiting behind her front window. Parked right outside Lisa's home was my husband's car, Tom's car. The same one he'd said was downtown, in a meeting. The same car I'd waved goodbye to that morning. Suddenly, my exhaustion was replaced with something colder dread. And yet, I needed to see more. I needed to hear it. What I heard behind that window changed everything I thought. I knew about love, trust and family. If you've ever ignored your gut, don't, because sometimes it's not just instinct, it's the truth trying to save you. I pulled over 3 houses down, far enough that no one inside would notice. My hands trembled slightly as I turned off the engine. Maybe he's just helping her fix something, I told myself. Maybe he's dropping something off, maybe, but my gut, the same quiet voice that led me here, was already whispering, "You know better." Tom's car was unmistakable, the faded veteran bumper sticker, the dent near the tail light from backing into the mailbox last winter, his work badge still dangling from the rearview mirror like always. There was no mistaking it. He was here, not at work, not stuck in traffic. Here, at Lisa's, I stepped out and moved slowly, feeling the soft crunch of gravel beneath my shoes. I stayed low, near the side of the house, where the living room window faced the street. Lisa never did care much for curtains. Hers were always just barely drawn, enough to let the sunlight in, but not enough to keep secrets out, and through that small slit, I heard laughter. Not TV, not music, laughter, the kind that's easy, unguarded, familiar. Then I heard her voice, Lisa's, clear as a bell. "Martha has no clue. Honestly, I don't think she ever will." And then Tom's voice. Casual, amused, she's too trusting. That's why it's been so easy. For a moment, the world went silent. I couldn't hear the birds anymore, or the breeze through the trees, just the pounding of my own heart. The words rang in my ears like church bells on Sunday, only these weren't calling for prayer. They were tolling the death of everything I thought was real. I crouched down lower, afraid even the sound of my breathing might give me away. My legs trembled, my throat tightened. I wanted to believe I misunderstood, that I was mishearing. But then came the next line, Lisa again, almost laughing. I almost feel bad. "But you said it yourself, she's not exciting. She's just comfortable." And Tom replied without hesitation, "Comfortable like an old pair of sneakers." That was it. That was the blow I didn't expect. It wasn't just betrayal. It was ridicule. It was contempt. I wasn't just the wife they were sneaking around behind. I was the joke. I looked down at my own hands. I hadn't even realized I'd been gripping the hem of my shirt so tightly the fabric had twisted like rope in my fingers. The air felt thinner somehow, harder to breathe. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't storm the front door like some woman in a soap opera. I just stood there, paralyzed, not with fear, but with the raw, unfamiliar sting of clarity, too. People I had poured my heart into, the man I had built a life with, the sister I had protected since she was in pigtails, and here they were tearing me apart like it was nothing, like I was nothing. I don't know how long I stood there, maybe a minute, maybe 5, time lost meaning. All I know is, eventually, I backed away, quiet as a shadow. I returned to my car, sat behind the wheel, and stared at the dashboard as tears blurred my vision, not from sadness, not yet, but from the sudden, aching realization that I had been the only one holding this family together, and no one else seemed to care. Lisa's words kept playing on repeat. She has no clue. But now I did, and what they didn't know, what neither of them could possibly guess, was that their little secret, their moment of laughter at my expense, had just awakened something in me. Something they'd never seen coming. Not fury, not despair. Resolve. That night, everything looked the same except nothing was. The porch light still flickered like always when I came home. Tom's shoes were by the door, his jacket on the hook. Our dog, Max, wagged his tail when I walked in like nothing had changed. But inside me, everything had. I walked through the house in a fog. The kind you get after hearing a doctor say it's cancer, or when someone calls in the middle of the night with bad news. It was a kind of grief, except no one had died, just my belief in the two people I trusted most. Tom was already in bed when I got out of the shower, laying there, snoring gently. One arm draped across my side of the mattress like he owned it. I stood in the doorway for what felt like forever, just watching him, the man I had shared holidays with, Sunday mornings, silent cups of coffee, hospital waiting rooms, life. And now I couldn't even recognize him. I slipped beneath the sheets, careful not to disturb him. My side was cold, my body was warm, but I felt nothing. Nothing except the weight of all those years pressing down on me. How long had it been going on? Weeks, months. Had they laughed behind my back while I cooked dinner, whispered behind closed doors at family events? Did Lisa hug me goodbye at Christmas knowing she was sleeping with my husband? I thought back, searched for signs. There had been moments I now saw differently. Like the time Lisa bailed on our tea date last minute, saying she had a headache. Tom had gone out that afternoon, came home looking uneasy. I asked what was wrong. He smiled and said, "Nothing, just tired." I believed him. Or the night we all had dinner at Mom's, Lisa barely touched her plate. Tom kept checking his phone. They didn't speak, but something was off. I thought maybe Lisa was struggling again after her divorce. I even offered to help her with rent. The irony, I lay in bed replaying those memories, one after the next, like a slideshow I hadn't asked to see. But now I noticed the details, the awkward silences, the glance too long, the laughter forced. It had all been there, hidden in plain sight. And me, I wasn't blind, I was loyal, I was trusting. I had given them both the benefit of the doubt. Time after time. That's what hurt the most, not the act itself, but how easily they had done it, how carelessly they had stepped over my heart like it was a rug on the porch. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between Tom's breaths. I wanted to shake him awake, shout, "How could you?" I wanted to pack a bag, slam the door, and run. But I didn't, because I knew something else now. This wasn't the moment to react. This was the moment to observe, to remember, to plan. At 3 a.m. I sat up and walked into the kitchen. I made a cup of tea I didn't drink. I stared out the window and told myself something I hadn't said in years. Martha, this isn't your fault. But it is your move. The betrayal had broken something. Yes, but it had also awakened something else, a quiet strength, something deeper than rage, stronger than tears. A woman who had given everything, and now had nothing left to lose. They thought I was weak because I was kind, but kindness and weakness, they're not the same thing. And now I knew they had started a fire they couldn't control, and I was no longer the woman who would burn in it. The days that followed were strangely calm. On the outside, nothing changed. I still packed Tom's lunch every morning. I still smiled when he made small talk over breakfast, nodding along while he pretended nothing was different. He had no idea that the woman sitting across from him was no longer his wife. Not really. I was a woman in transition. A woman awakening. Gone was the Martha who second-guessed her instincts. Gone was the Martha who believed love could fix anything. In her place was someone sharper, quieter, and far more dangerous. A woman who had seen the truth and refused to look away. I didn't confront Tom. Not yet. I needed more than emotion. I needed facts. I needed a case, not just a broken heart. That's when I began watching, not frantically, but patiently. I became a student of his habits, what time he left the house, where he said he was going, what stories he told. I listened. I waited. One evening, he left his phone unattended while showering. My hands shook slightly as I picked it up, but I moved quickly. Most of his texts had been wiped clean, but one thread stood out, a contact saved under the name. Most of the messages were deleted, except one. She'll never see it coming. I almost feel guilty. The reply chilled me to the bone, almost. I didn't need a signature to know that was Lisa. That same week, I followed her after she told Mom she had errands in town. I stayed 2 cars behind, careful not to draw attention. She pulled into a cheap roadside motel just off Route 74. 10 minutes later, Tom's car pulled in behind her. I didn't get out. I didn't need to. I sat across the street in silence, watching the people I once called family vanish into a building that reeked of secrecy. That was my proof, but I wasn't finished. I started collecting everything: photos, text backups, dates, locations, mileage logs. I documented it all, then stored it on a USB drive and mailed it to myself, just in case. I made copies and stashed them in places Tom would never think to look, and while I built my case, I played my role perfectly. At home, I asked him how work was going. I laughed at his tired little jokes. I even helped Lisa pick out curtains for her apartment, nodding politely while she talked about how healing her post-divorce journey had been. The nerve. I wore my pain like a coat no one could see, and beneath it, I was building armor. The next step was legal. I met with a woman named Jenna Sharp, poised, not easily rattled. I sat across from her in her modest downtown office, laid out everything I had discovered, and told her I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity, control, and a clean exit. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something I'll never forget. Martha, you have more power than you think. With her help, I began untangling myself from Tom, string by string. I opened a new checking account and redirected my paychecks. I removed my name from our barely used joint savings. I quietly updated the deed on the small lakefront cabin my father left me, property Tom didn't even know was mine. It was mine alone. And it was my future. Each step was a stitch in the fabric of my freedom. I wasn't leaving in a whirlwind of screaming matches or broken plates. That would have made me look unhinged. Weak, emotional. No, I was leaving like a ghost with a flashlight, seeing everything, touching nothing, but preparing for the storm they never saw coming. Tom still kissed my cheek at night. Lisa still texted me good morning with emojis. They thought I was blind. They thought I was soft. But soft doesn't mean stupid, and silence doesn't mean surrender. I was watching. I was waiting, and I was almost ready. My birthday arrived like it always did, quietly, with a chill in the late October air and a few cards in the mailbox. But this year, I could feel something different. The smiles felt too wide, the questions too rehearsed. Tom had been sneaking around on his phone all week, whispering in the hallway, texting with that nervous energy he only gets when he's planning a surprise or telling a lie. My mother called twice that morning, asking if I'd be free for dinner. Just a little family gathering, she said. Lisa's bringing something special. I could almost hear the forced cheer in her voice. Lisa texted at 7:04 a.m., a cheery happy birthday, big sis, with 3 hearts and a cake emoji. It was the kind of over-the-top greeting that tried too hard. I knew she was performing, but I let her. I let them all perform. The dinner was at Mom's house. Just like always, streamers, balloons, a happy birthday, Martha cake with buttercream frosting. Tom stood behind me with his hand on my shoulder like a proud husband. I felt the weight of his fingers. The press of betrayal right through my sweater. I smiled and played along. I knew what was coming, I just didn't know how they'd do it. Dinner passed in polite small talk. My nephew spilled juice. My brother-in-law told another story about his bad back. I listened, I laughed. I ate my baked chicken and green beans. I waited, and then Lisa stood up. She tapped her fork against her glass and cleared her throat, hand resting on her stomach. The room quieted. I have an announcement, she said, eyes darting toward Tom for a fraction of a second. She didn't even pause. Just dropped it like confetti. I'm pregnant. Gasps, a fork clattered. My aunt covered her mouth. Lisa smiled wide and added, I know this isn't how we expected things to go, but life is full of surprises. We're a family now. She didn't even look at me. Like I was invisible, like this moment was hers, and I was just a forgotten extra in her little play. Tom said nothing, not a word. He stood frozen behind me, like even he hadn't expected her to say it aloud. I set down my fork, picked up my wine glass, and stood slowly. Congratulations, I said, my voice calm no. To both of you. Lisa blinked. Tom opened his mouth, then shut it again. I actually have something for you too, I said, reaching into my purse. I pulled out a small white envelope and handed it to Lisa. She hesitated, but took it. The moment her eyes landed on the contents, her smile disappeared. Her fingers trembled. Inside was a printed DNA report. I had taken Tom's DNA from his toothbrush, Lisa's from a napkin at brunch. I didn't need it for course, I needed it for me. And it confirmed one thing. Tom couldn't be the father, too. Years ago, after a minor health scare, Tom had quietly undergone a vasectomy. He told me it was temporary, reversible, something to help with our timing. What he never told Lisa was that it was permanent. The silence around the table was deafening. Tom stepped forward. Martha, what is this? I turned to him, holding my glass with steady hands. You told me we weren't ready for kids. You said someday. Then you went behind my back and gave that dream to someone else. He stammered. I cut him off. Remember, your doctor. I scheduled the appointment, picked up your medication. You think I didn't know? Lisa looked like she'd been slapped. I turned back to the table, raised my glass, to betrayal, to lies, and to the best birthday gift I've ever received, the truth. Then I reached into my purse one last time. Another envelope, this one, addressed to Tom, inside. A letter from my attorney outlining the sale of the house which was always in my name, bank accounts closed, vehicles reclaimed, his access revoked. The man beside Lisa had nothing left. He looked at the papers like they were written in another language. You thought I didn't know, I said, voice quiet but clear, but I've known for a long time. And now so does everyone else. I turned to Lisa, our eyes locked. I smiled not with bitterness, but with relief. You wanted my life. Fine, but you'll be raising someone else's baby, alone, in the ashes you thought were gold. Asterisk, and just like that. I picked up my purse, nodded at my mother, and walked. Out the door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The days after my birthday unfolded like dominoes. Tom called. He texted. He left voicemails, dozens of them. At first, it was the standard script. Can we talk? It's not what you think. Please just give me a chance to explain. Then came the excuses. I didn't know she was going to say it like that was the problem. Not the affair, not the betrayal. But the fact that Lisa had aired their dirty little secret at my birthday table like it was a baby shower. I didn't answer. I didn't owe him my time. I had said what I needed. To say clearly, directly, and in front of witnesses, the house, sold, the title was always in my name, quietly transferred into my name only years ago after my father passed. Tom had never bothered to ask. He assumed, like he assumed I'd never leave. Like he assumed I'd never notice. The bank accounts closed, joint credit cards cancelled, his access revoked. I had documented every dollar, every purchase, every shady withdrawal tied to Lisa's name. By the end of the week, his name had been removed from every piece of my life. Tom was left with a suitcase, a rented room across town, and a reputation in shambles. Lisa, she disappeared. Didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at Sunday dinner with Mom anymore. My mother tried to stay neutral, bless her heart, but even she couldn't pretend not to see it anymore. The golden daughter, the poor thing fresh off a divorce. The one I had held up through her rock bottom was now exposed, not just for what she did, but for who she really was. Whispers started. A cousin called and said, "I don't want to get involved, but people are talking." One of Lisa's friends reached out to me, quietly apologizing. I had no idea. I thought you should know. She's not the person I thought she was. Neither was Tom. And that's the funny thing about betrayal, it never stops with you. The same people willing to lie to you will eventually lie to each other, because if you can cheat with someone, you can cheat on someone. And that's exactly what happened. Tom demanded a paternity test. And when it came back as I already knew it would, he wasn't the father, from what I heard. The fallout was spectacular. They fought, screamed. Lisa called him a liar. He called her worse. He moved out. She tried to reach me once, but didn't leave a voicemail. I think part of her still believed I'd come running to fix it, to hold her hand like I always did. She underestimated just how far I had already walked away. Instead of responding, I mailed her a manila envelope. Inside was a legal notice, one tied to a property I had quietly transferred into her name weeks before. She thought I was helping her get back on her feet. In reality, I had traced part of that property's funding back to our joint marital assets, something her signature legally tied her to. The lawsuit wasn't about money. I didn't want her car. I didn't want her savings. I wanted something she'd never forget. Accountability. The first court date came and went. She didn't show. Her lawyer tried to settle. I remained calm, asked only for what was fair. But fair, when seen through the lens of truth, is devastating to those who built their world on lies. Their perfect little fantasy, it collapsed under the weight of its own selfishness. And me, I travelled. I repainted the walls of my new place. I started reading again books I never had time for. I joined a group for women going through divorce and found myself surrounded by people who understood the quiet kind of pain, the kind you wear every day like a thin shawl no one else sees. I didn't burn their lives down. I didn't need to. They did that all by themselves, and I walked away from the ashes with my peace intact, my dignity unshaken, and my name clean. They say healing isn't loud. It's not a grand gesture or a moment of fireworks. It's quiet. It's in the little things. Like watching the sunrise over a lake while holding a mug of coffee you brewed just the way you like it, no one else's. Preferences to consider, no one else to serve. After the storm passed, I moved into the lakefront cabin my father had left me. It sat about 20 miles outside of town. Tucked behind pine trees and cattails, it wasn't much a small two-bedroom, with squeaky floors and a roof that moaned in the wind, but it was mine. Entirely mine, and for the first time in years, I felt home. There were no whispers here. No lies floating between walls, no woman pretending not to notice, just stillness and space. At first, the silence was deafening. I'd spent decades filling every quiet moment with someone else's needs. Tom needed comfort, Lisa needed advice, work needed energy. I was the one who gave and gave. until I didn't even know where I ended and everyone else began. But here, with nothing but the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional knock of a woodpecker on the deck railing, I began to hear something I hadn't heard in years: my own thoughts. I started doing small things that used to bring me joy. I painted the kitchen a pale yellow, the same colour my grandmother once had in hers. I planted lavender by the front steps. I picked up old books I never finished and read them cover to cover. I even started walking by the lake at sunrise, watching the water shift in colour as the day began. And slowly, something shifted in me too. One morning, while reading a community bulletin board at the grocery store, I saw a flyer: Women in Transition Weekly Support Group, Thursdays at 6 p.m. I don't know what made me tear off the little tab with the phone number, but I did. The first night I went, I sat in the back of the room. There were women of all ages, some younger than my daughter would have been, some old enough to be my mother. They talked about cheating spouses, financial ruin, children who'd stopped calling, the ache of starting over, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't carrying the weight of my world alone. I started attending every week. Then I started helping. One evening, the group leader asked if I'd share my story. I hesitated, but something inside me stronger than fear said yes. I didn't share the drama. I didn't talk about birthday bombshells or DNA tests. I talked about clarity, about how the quiet after betrayal is a gift if you're brave enough to sit in it. I talked about reclaiming your time, your name, your breath. When I finished, a woman across the room, probably late 60s, stood up with tears in her eyes and said, "You just told my story. I just haven't lived the ending yet." And that's when I knew I hadn't just survived. I had transformed. The Martha who once waited for permission to be happy was gone. In her place was someone who knew how to create peace, not just chase it. Someone who understood that the best kind of revenge isn't destroying someone else's life, it's building your own. I never needed to hurt Tom or Lisa. Life took care of that on its own. What I needed was to remember that I was never broken, just bruised, and bruises fade. Now, every Thursday night, I light a candle on my windowsill and think of the women in that circle. And I remind myself, we don't rebuild by shouting. We rebuild by breathing, by loving ourselves, by choosing peace again and again, and I choose it every single day. Some people think revenge is loud. They think it means yelling, door slamming, tearing through someone's life like a tornado. But real revenge, it's quiet. It's walking away while the fire they started consumes them, not you. Lisa thought she'd won. She thought stealing my husband and announcing her pregnancy at my birthday dinner would shatter me. She expected tears, maybe even a breakdown. She wanted to wear the crown of the woman who took it all. But what she didn't realize was, I wasn't competing, I was leaving. And Tom, he stood there like a man watching his whole life sink beneath the surface. Not because I destroyed it, but because he did, with every lie he told, every text he thought I'd never see, every time he chose someone else while still sleeping beside me. Their fantasy fell apart. Not because I exposed it, but because it was never real to begin with. They built it on sand, not stone. Meanwhile, I walked away with my name, my dignity, and something far more precious than revenge, peace, these days. I don't think about them much. I hear whispers now and then. Lisa moved away. Tom's renting a room from a friend, still trying to piece together the version of himself he thought was invincible. But I don't check in. I don't look back. I no longer live in the past they broke. I live in the present I rebuilt. Here's the truth I hope you carry with you today. Sometimes the best way to win is to walk away with nothing but your self-respect and leave them holding the wreckage they created. Because real power isn't in shouting, it's in silence, it's in choosing yourself, and it's in knowing that peace, once found, is worth more than any apology never given. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of something you've lived through, share your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone. Your story may help someone else feel less alone. And if you believe in the quiet strength of women, in healing, in reclaiming your life on your terms, subscribe to the channel. We've got more stories just like this, stories of resilience, of rebirth, of real-life women walking away from the fire and never looking back, because sometimes the softest exit is the strongest move of all.